How many movies and television shows have you watched where two people were about to duel in a fencing match? I'm assuming that's what they're called. And you hear the referee yell, "En garde!" For those who don't know, fencing is an organized sport using a sword for attack and defense according to set moves and rules. And en garde means on guard. So it's a French word, En-Garde, which means on guard, ONGUARD. And it's an idiom which means alert and ready to respond to possible danger, threats, problems, etc. Well, I don't know if anyone else has realized, but this spiritual world we're in has gotten real intense lately. And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, let's get into it. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's 1 Peter 5:8. This next one I'm going to read from the New International Version because of how it words the passage. It says, "Be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong." The other translation says, "Watch." And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come on all of them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch you therefore, and in another version it says, "Be on guard, and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Adam." That was Luke 21:34-36. The one I read before that I forgot to mention was 1 Corinthians 16:13. At least I think I forgot to mention. All right. So these are just a few of the times Yah's word basically says, "En garde." All right. So we were even told who the enemy truly is. Ephesians 6:12 tells us that the enemy is principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this age, spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places or in heavenly realms. And then next we're told to take up the whole armor of Yehoshua so that we may be able to withstand in the evil day. En garde, basically. So the armor is laid out as follows. We have the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness. Our feet are shod with the preparation of the basora of shalom, or peace. We have the shield of faith, which quenches the fiery darts of the wicked one. The helmet of salvation. The sword of the Ruach, which is the word of Yahuwah. But listen, verse 18 lists a part of the armor that a lot of people miss. I used to miss it. It wasn't until Ruach HaKodesh revealed it to me that I was like, and that's prayer. Verse 18 talks about prayer, and that's part of being watchful. If you want to go back, that's Ephesians 6:13-18, just so you can, do your own little studying. So Leviticus 8:1-9 reads as follows. "And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, the anointing oil, a bull as a sin offering, 2 rams, and a basket of unleavened bread. And gather all the congregation together at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly." So the door of the tabernacle of the assembly is Yehoshua HaMashiach. Remember in John 10, he says, "I am the door," and he was talking about to the sheepfold. So he's the door of the tabernacle of the assembly. So Moshe did as Yahuwah commanded him, and the congregation was gathered together at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly. And Moshe said to the congregation, "This is what Yahuwah commanded to be done." Then Moshe brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. So listen, this is a water baptism, okay? This is a water baptism. I know I didn't say it on here. I said it on one of the YouTube videos that I posted a while back. But, the reason why water baptism, like I was talking about how water baptism was around during the ancient times. How do I know this? Because when Yehoshua the Immerser, or John the Baptist, was baptizing people in the Jordan, nobody thought it odd that he was dipping people in this water. As a matter of fact, a lot of people came to him to be baptized. So it wasn't a concept that was foreign to them. It was foreign to us because we were being brought up in a false religious system, but it was not foreign to the people, to our ancestors. And he put the tunic on him and girded him with the belt and clothed him with the robe and put the ephod on him, and he girded him with the belt of the ephod and bound it unto him therewith. And he put the breastplate upon him also he put in the breastplate the Urim and the Thummim. And those are two stones that were used to cast lots. So basically, whichever one it fell on, that let them know what, basically it was their way of discernment back then to righteously judge a thing. And he put the turban upon his head, helmet of salvation. I want you guys to listen to the different pieces of the armor of Yahuwah. Also upon the turban, even upon his forefront, did he put a laftah, the golden plate, the holy crown, as Yahuwah commanded Moshe. And Moshe took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was therein, and sanctified them. Now you can read more about the priestly garments in Exodus chapter 28. And I actually recommend you reading this, especially about what's written on the golden plate that's on the turban. Okay, so just go read Exodus 28 because it's amazing. But and he's talking about consecrating them, by the way, in this. So when we were instructed to put on the whole armor of Yahuwah, we were being told to put on priestly garments. Now this is a different contrast to what we were told, or what many of us were told, in the false religious system of Christianity. We were told, how many times did you sit in a sermon where the armor of God is what they called him, the armor of Yahuwah was likened unto a Roman soldier, but it's actually priestly garments, which is why prayer and faith are included as part, and then the sword is the word of Yahuwah, and peace, prayer, faith, and peace are included in part of the armor. You know what I'm saying? And the reason Ephesians 6:18 is so important as part of our armor is because it's our communication with Yahuwah on our own behalf and the behalf of others. Lately, Ruach HaKodesh has been speaking about praying against the works of the flesh written within Yasharal. All right? And I never thought to do this on my own. This is completely Ruach HaKodesh says that was, Yah's word says that we don't know what to pray for. So Ruach HaKodesh reveals it to us, And it's time we go on the offense, okay? So what I mean by that is, take football, for instance. I hate using this analogy because it is, worldly. But you have the offense and you have the defense. The defenses are the ones that are defending the end zone, but the offensive team is the one that is charging the end zone. They're the ones running the ball. So it's time that Yasharal, the children of Yahuwah, stand up and go on the offense. And we don't have to wait for the fight to show up in our lives personally. And Ak was led to tell me one day that I should command the unclean Ruach in my city to flee during my morning prayer. And I know it's working because, so I was at work one day, right? First and foremost, I had a coworker that unfortunately he lost his job, but he was one of the vessels being used by the enemy heavily. And right before he got fired, there was another young woman, a Christian woman, and that's key to the story, that wound up getting hired there. And when I was training her, she told me the story about how her and her husband had went to this estate sale, and she was able to tell her husband, now mind you, they didn't know the person that had passed away, but she was able to tell her husband, the gender of the man, the sex of the man, well, the sex of the person, who happened to be a man, where they died in the house, how they died in the house, so on and so forth. And she was telling me the story as though I was going to be like, oh, wow. But the first thing Ruach HaKodesh said was, she's a medium. She's talking to she's talking to familiar spirits. And I just was like, oh, okay. So, you know what I'm saying? So fast forward to about a week or two ago. It's probably about a week ago. I was at work And she was already a little, flustered when she got to work, but me and her were joking, laughing, whatever. I went up to my rooms to do my thing, and I'm a housekeeper, by the way. I clean rooms for a hotel. So I'm upstairs cleaning my room. She's downstairs doing whatever. And she was mad. She was upset. What she was upset about was this clipboard. Apparently somebody switched the clipboard on her card, and she was upset about it. It's a whole long story behind it, but that's not the focus of the story. So at one point, the breakfast lady comes upstairs, and she's like, I can't find anybody. Can you, call on the walkie-talkie and let everybody know breakfast is ready? I was like, sure. So me and her talked for just a brief second. She went downstairs and said, I'll be down there in a second. I just wanted to finish what I'm doing. So as I came out of the room, I started to walk towards the elevator, and the center portion of our hotel is like a courtyard. So I could see from down the hallway straight to the elevator, but there's a pillar at that corner, obviously holding up the ceiling. So I saw this clear/white wispy thing dart around the corner, but it never came out the other side of that pillar. So the first thing, as I'm walking to the elevator, I just start praying. And one of the things I remember saying was, you got to get up out this hotel. No problem. Went downstairs, sat down with with the young woman that was upset about the clipboard, and the other two housekeepers that were working. They were sitting behind her, so her back was to them, and I was facing them. Well, the young lady sitting with me asked me, how I was doing, and as I began to answer, she just turns around to the young woman who switched the clipboards, and she just snaps on her. It was like a switch flipped, and she just goes off. And all of us are just sitting there like, okay, well, what just happened? Because 1 minute she was talking to me, and in the middle of me saying, answering her question, she flips out. So Ruach HaKodesh, I got up at that point, and after she flipped, she turned back around, and then she started talking on her phone like nothing had just happened, like you didn't just turn around and snap on this chick. So I went and threw my plate in the trash, and as I walked past the other young woman who got snapped on, I just gave her a hug, went to the office, and I was planning on letting my managers know, hey, there's a situation that you probably want to, pull both ladies in here to talk about. They were interviewing someone, so I wasn't able to go in at that moment, and wound up talking to the front desk guy to the point where the young woman that snapped beat me into the office. And they all closed the door. And so I'm standing outside like, okay, what's about to happen? She comes out looking like she's crying. I hear her punch out. She didn't say anything as she walked past me. She texted me later and let me know, she apologized for not saying bye and all this other stuff. But when my managers asked me what happened, I was like, it came out of nowhere. She snapped on her, and then just as quickly as she snapped back out of it. You know what I'm saying? So fast forward to later on that day. So I'm going into one of the rooms. It's what you call a stayover. I mean, it sounds like, it is exactly what it sounds like. So the guest that rented out that room is planning on renting that room again. They're staying in that room, so they probably rented it for a few days or whatnot, but they're not currently in the room, so we still have to clean the room for them while they're not in the room. So I go into this room, and I'm talking on the phone. I have my Bluetooth earbuds in. We're allowed to do it. My boss doesn't mind as long as we, get our rooms cleaned. But anyway, I'm on the phone. I turn around and face this desk, and I see not one, not two, but 3 tarot card decks and some crystals sitting on the desk. So immediately I tell the person on the phone, I gotta pray real quick. At first I had put them on mute so I could pray, and they just kept talking to my ear like, okay. So I just hung up the phone and I went to praying. Well, one of my managers came up and she saw me, and I said, I'm gonna tell you what happened. So I explained to her what I saw in the room and what I had seen going down the hallway when I was going down to lunch. And I said, that's what happened. That thing jumped at her. Because you remember I told you this woman was a medium. So when Ruach HaKodesh had me to open my mouth and say, you got to get out of this hotel, that thing went and found her, jumped into her, because she was already an open channel for them to jump in, and an open vessel for them to jump in and out of, jumped in her, and then, had that incident happen, and then she quit. So it did leave, but it left through her. So when I'm telling my manager about what happened, she said earlier that day, now mind you, this room is 2 stories up directly over the laundry room, almost directly over the laundry room. She told me that she was in the laundry room earlier that day before everything had went down with old girl. And she thought that the boss, our main boss, had walked into the laundry room, and she started talking to her, and she realized that she wasn't in there. So, you know, this is the things that's going on. So this is how I know that these prayers are working, because now the enemy is sending people that are actively participating in his kingdom. Like, you got folks out there that don't realize that they're part of the kingdom of darkness. A lot of them think they're part of the kingdom of Yahuwah, but they don't realize that they are vessels of the enemy. But when you dabble in the occult, like tarot and numerology and all that stuff, you are a willing and active participant. You might think that what you're doing is for the good, but you know, you get what I'm trying to say. So praise and worship is a great way to go on the offense as well. A lot of people play worship music in their homes and in their cars, but what about at work or the grocery store, etc.? And I'm not talking about being belligerent or ignorant with it. You can put a Bluetooth headphone in your ear, press play, and allow Ruach HaKodesh to take over. You know, sometimes when I go to the grocery store, I just put one in my ear, and that way I have that playing in the background. I might even sing a little bit for the people, you know what I'm saying? But my point is, you don't have to allow the praise and worship music of the kingdom of darkness to seep into your subconscious. There are ways around that, especially in 2023 with all this new technology. You can have that playing in the background to keep your subconscious clean and clear of the subliminal messages that are in a lot of these songs. And obedience is the highest form of worship, which is why obedience is better than sacrifice. So when you obey, you're actually worshiping Yahuwah. That was when I had that revealed to me, I was like, wow, that's why there's such an emphasis on us being obedient. Fasting is the best way to regain your focus when you get a little off track. So when I think of fasting, I think of Daniel and Yehoshua HaMashiach. So if you look in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, it's verses 2 and 3, but you know me, read the whole chapter. But Daniel didn't eat until he heard from Yahuwah. And in Christianity, they call it the Daniel fast, the 21-day Daniel fast. But it was really, he had sought Yahuwah about something, and he stayed in Yahuwah's presence on his face until Yahuwah answered him. And the thing about it is, you remember Gabriel was like, yo, you know, I was on my way the first day you started praying with the answer, but then I got hung up by the Prince of Persia, and Michael had to come help me. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, Daniel stayed on his face until he received that word. You know what I'm saying? We got to be as desperate to receive instruction from Yahuwah as well. We got to be that desperate to where we can't even eat until we get that word from him. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking to myself as well, especially because, you know, we were taught to, you know, plan these things out, but we're supposed to be led. Yehoshua received water baptism. Ruach HaKodesh alighted upon him. Yahuwah affirmed him. And then when Ruach HaKodesh led him into the wilderness, where Hasatan was waiting to tempt him. Yehoshua fasted, but there's no evidence it was planned, meaning he didn't set a date and say he wasn't going to eat for X amount of days. And you can go read about that, Matthew 3, verses 16 to 17, and then Matthew 4, verses 1 to 11. But yeah, these are things that they were just led to do these things. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with planning stuff out, because baby steps, you know what I'm saying? It's all right if you're still at the point where you're like, you know, on this date to this date, I'm not going to eat anything, or I'm only going to eat vegetables, or that's okay. I don't want to take away from you attempting to do something that's pleasing unto Yahuwah. I don't want to take away from that. I'm just saying we have to graduate out of these things into the spirit and allow Ruach HaKodesh to start taking over. That's all I'm saying. So Matthew 4:4 says, but he answered and said, it is written, man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahuwah. And that's a direct quote from Deuteronomy 8:3, which says, and he humbled you and suffered you to hunger, which sounds like fasting to me, and fed you with manna, which you knew not, neither did your fathers know, that he might make you to know that man does not live by bread alone, or bread only, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahuwah man lives. Okay? So far we have prayer, we have fasting, we have praise and worship, and now we're about to be consecrated. Consecration is also important in order for a person to be on guard. Just like with fasting, Yahuwah calls us forth to be consecrated. This is not something that we do on our own, and it's not something that man could do unto you unless they be led by Ruach HaKodesh, like Moshe was with his brother and his nephews. So check this out. Leviticus 8:33 says, "And you shall not go out of the door of the tabernacle of the assembly in 7 days." And I'm going to read down to verse 35. "Until the days of your consecration be at an end. For 7 days shall he consecrate you. As he has done this day, so Yahuwah has commanded to do, to make an atonement for you. Therefore shall you abide at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly day and night 7 days, and guard the watch of Yahuwah, that you die not. For so I am commanded." And I'll finish with verse 36. So verse 36 says, "So Aaron and his sons did alaftah all things which Yahuwah commanded by the hand of Moshe." So they were obedient to these things. All right, 1 Peter 3:8. It says, "Finally, be you all of one mind, having compassion one of another, love as brethren, be pitiful, be courageous." Why does that not sound like... You know what? It's 2 Peter 3:8. So 2 Peter 3:8 says, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with Yahuwah as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day." Okay? So the 7 days, air quotes, Yahuwah took to create this planet wasn't 7 24-hour periods. Okay? So let's go back to Leviticus 8:35. So 7 days the priests were to remain at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly, which is Yehoshua HaMashiach. Okay? For 7 days. All right? So understand, during this particular instruction, it probably was 7 24-hour periods, but they were representative of something on a larger scale. Again, a day in Yahuwah is as 1,000 days, and 1,000 days is as a day in Yahuwah's. And basically what that scripture is saying is Yahuwah is not constrained by time like we are. But with that being said, we have to understand that when it says day, it's not necessarily talking about a 24-hour period. All right? So let's go and look into this a little bit deeper. All right? So again, verse 35 is talking about 7 days the priests were to remain at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly, which is Yehoshua HaMashiach. I'm going to go to John 10 and read verses 1 to 10 real quick, because that will help us better understand what the Ruach is speaking right now. All right. Aman, aman, I say unto you, he that enters not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. First and foremost, I just want to say, Ruach HaKodesh gave me the revelation to that. This is talking about people that are not coming in by Yehoshua HaMashiach. So if you have people that are still calling on Jesus Christ or Buddha or whatever, but they're still trying to get the inheritance of the people of Yasharal or Yahuwah's chosen people, if they're still trying to get that inheritance without coming through Yahushua, they are thieves and robbers, okay? They're trying to rob you of your inheritance that Yahushua afforded you when he hung on that tree and then rose again for our salvation. They are thieves and robbers. This is what it's saying. But he that enters in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he puts forth his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And a stranger they will not follow, but flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. This parable spoke Yahushua unto them, but they understood not what things they were which he spoke unto them. Then said Yehoshua unto them again, Aman, aman, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. All right? So they're over here talking about Buddha and Krishna and Jesus Christ. The true sheep were not listening. I was talking to my dad the other day, and I was telling him, even in Christianity, I had so many questions. Yeah, I was repping Jesus Christ because I thought that was the truth, life, and the way. But I had so many questions. I don't have those same questions now that I know Yehoshua. I don't have those questions anymore because there was a lot of confusion when I was in Christianity because it's one of the religions of the land of confusion, Babylon. But there's no more confusion. I just want to, put that out there. I am the door. By me, if any man enters in, he shall be saved and shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So he's talking about eternal life right here. Having life more abundantly is eternal life. That's I am come that they might have life and have eternal life is what he's saying. And if I'm not mistaken, verse 28, he actually just goes ahead and says that. I'm coming to bring them eternal life. All right, skip on over to John 15, starting at verse 4, which reads, abide in me. So here's this word abide again. So if you remember from Leviticus 8 and 35, it says that they are to abide at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly for 7 days. Now Yehoshua is saying, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, no more can you except you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the netzrim, which is branches. He that abides in me and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. If a man abides not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, which is the second death, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it will be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit. So shall you be my Talmudim, or disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Continue you in my love. If you guard my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have guarded my Father's commandments and abided in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. I have to go back and read Leviticus 8 and 35 for you. Therefore shall you abide at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly day and night, 7 days, and guard the watch of Yahuwah, that you die not. We just read in John chapter 15 that if you don't abide him, because he's the branch, he's the, you know what I'm trying to say. What he just said. If we don't abide in him, because the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, if we don't abide in him, we're going to die. We're going to wither away and die and be thrown into the fire. And now he's telling the priests, remember, because this is Aaron and his sons, the Levitical priests being consecrated, and these are the instructions that Moshe was told to give to them, that for 7 days they have to abide at the door of the tabernacle of the assembly. So, what am I saying? The millennial reign, which is 1,000 years, and we know that 1,000 years is a day before Yahuwah, and a day is but 1,000 years. So what am I saying? Could it possibly be that what he's saying when he consecrated these priests, it was spiritually speaking, telling us that our entire life must be spent in the presence of Yehoshua, day and night, because if we don't abide in his presence day and night, we will die. And we know that to be true because he said it in John 15. We will be, if we don't abide in him, we will wither away, be cut off, and thrown into the fire to be burned. That's dying. That's the second death. And I know it seems like I'm just repeating myself over and over and over again, but this is very crucial that we get this understanding. And by all means, contact me if you're not understanding and you have questions, or matter of fact, Well, I'll be happy to answer those questions, but before you contact me, talk to Yahuwah. Ask him to show it to you, because he could do a better job at explaining it than I can. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about the Levitical priesthood is the Levitical priesthood was always meant to teach us how to be the bride of Hamashiach. This is how we function as his bride. Righteously judging a thing. Repentance. Offering up praises. Worshiping, praying, being obedient, so on and so forth. We see mankind has gotten caught up on the sacrificial animals and, the actual laws and statutes of stoning people, putting them outside the assembly. We tend to get caught up on those types of things. And that's never been what it was about. It was about something spiritual. Yahuwah is spirit. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Right? Prayerfully, this is making sense. All right. So last thing we need to remember while remaining on guard is that not every attack of the enemy hurts, so to speak. Flattery is a powerful and destructive tool of the enemy. The Ark of the Covenant have cherubim facing each other with their wings covering the center portion, which is the mercy seat where Yahuwah's presence is supposed to rest. And it's 2 cherubim to be exact. Yahuwah didn't have Moshe build it this way for no reason. It's a glimpse of his throne. You remember Yahushua told us to pray for things, for his kingdom to come on earth as it is in heaven? So this is a glimpse of Yahuwah's throne room in the Shamayim. And Hasatan was one of those cherubim that used to cover the throne of Yahuwah. How do I know this? Go to Ezekiel 28, verses 11 to 14. And yeah, let's see if I can find it in some quick amount of time. Maybe not quick, but I still found it. All right, 11 and 14. Moreover, the word of Yahuwah came upon me. This is Ezekiel talking, saying, Son of Adam, take up a lamentation upon the king of Sor. And it says Tyre in, other translations. And say unto him, Thus says Adonai Yahuwah, you seal up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You have been in Aden, the garden of Yahuwah. Every precious stone was your covering. The sardis, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of your tabrets and of your pipes was prepared in you in the day that you were created. You are the anointed cherub that covers, and I have set you so. You were upon the holy mountain of Yahuwah. You walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. All right? And if you continue on reading, you'll understand that this was Ezekiel. It starts off with him talking about the king of Tyre, and then it switches over to him talking about Hasatan. So Yahuwah is giving us glimpses of different things that happened. And verse 13 is a good example of why so many people are turning to crystals for various reasons. Because those crystals were Hasatan's garments. He was arrayed in these garments. So when you see people, I'm about to charge my crystals, and they're rubbing crystals all over themselves, and it's like crack. When you see this, understand this is why. This is why these crystals are so, which is why when I saw those crystals in that room, I was like, nah, match with those tarot cards? Nah, buddy. So Yasharal is now set up to take the place of Hasatan and guard Yahuwah's throne by being the wife of Yahushua and carrying out our wifely duties unto Yahushua. If we don't give Yahuwah the glory, when someone attempts to flatter us, just like Hasatan, we're mishandling Yahuwah's glory. And that's what caused Hasatan's fall. Remember that. Remember that. So let me jump back over into the book of John. 13, starting at verse 19, and we're going to go down to verse 38, which I think is the last. Yes, the last verse. So what happened in verses 1 to 18? This is when Yehoshua had washed his Talmudim's feet, so on and so forth. And Kepha is like, why are you washing my feet? And he's like, what I do now, you don't understand. He was like, not my feet, but my whole body. And he was like, if you're already clean, I only need to wash your feet. And he, all that stuff. That's what happened leading up to verse 19. So we understand that this is happening around the Feast of the Pesach, because that's when that meal took place, where this was happening. Now I tell you before it come, that when it come to pass, you may believe that I am he. Aman aman, I say unto you, he that receives whomsoever I send receives me, and he that receives me, alaftah, receives him that sent me. When Yehoshua had thus said, he was troubled in his ruach, and testified and said, Aman aman, I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. Then the Talmudim looked one to another, doubting of whom he spoke. Now there was leaning on Yehusha's bosom one of his Talmudim, whom Yehoshua loved. Shimon Kepha therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who it should be of whom he spoke. So I'm going to stop right there real quick. At this meal, there was a U-shaped table called a triclinium. At the head of the table on one side was where the favored servant, the one that was leaning into the bosom of Yehoshua, that Kepha asked to ask him, that's where this disciple was sitting. Next to him would have been Yehoshua, obviously, because he was leaning on his bosom. But then after that would have been Yehuda Iscariot. And then directly across from the favorite servant would have been, in the U shape, would have been Kepha. And Kepha was sitting in the place of the servant. So the people, anybody that sat in that seat where Kepha was sitting, was the one that actually was supposed to get up and wash everybody's feet, because they were closer to the water bucket. Which is part of the reason why Kepha was like, why are you washing our feet? Because you got to remember, this is the culture that they were living in. So he's not just saying these things because he's saying these things. Take your modern mind out of it and have the mind of these ancient people. He's like, why are you washing my feet? It's my job, basically. You know what I'm saying? That's basically why he was protesting. And then Yehoshua had to explain to him. But check this out. Remember I said, everybody says that John is the favored disciple. I don't know who he is, but the favorite disciple is sitting there. Then you have Yehoshua, then you have Yehuda Iscariot. What is that a picture of? Is that not a cherub, Yahuwah, and a cherub? Just like the throne room, just like the Ark of the Covenant, because remember, Yehoshua HaMashiach is the Ark of the Covenant in the flesh as well. He is the Ark of the Covenant that we have with Yahuwah HaMashiach. With Yahuwah HaMashiach, with Yahuwah Zavaot. So he then lied on. I already read that. Yehoshua answered, He it is to whom I shall give a morsel when I have dipped it. And when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Yehuda Iscariot, the son of Shimon. And after that morsel, Satan entered into him. Then said Yehoshua alaftah unto him, that you do quickly. Gotta stop there. That just goes back to what I just said. There's a picture that's being shown to us, because you have two disciples either side of Yehoshua. Just like the Ark of the Covenant has the mercy seat and two cherubs, or cherubim, covering the center portion where Yahuwah's presence would be. And that is an image of Yahuwah's throne in heaven. Right? So when he said, basically in other translations it says, what you do quickly. So he's saying, the way you be acting up, how you did it the first time, go do that. That's what I got from this. He's saying what you did the first time, go do that. Because remember, Yehuda Iscariot betrayed Yehoshua. Hasatan betrayed Yahuwah. Prayerfully, the picture is starting to come together. He's telling us a story, y'all. He's telling it to us, but you have to have his Ruach HaKodesh in order to hear the truth. Because the world's telling a story too, and that story ain't gonna get you nowhere but the lake of fire. You know what I'm saying? I just want you all to hear the story that he's telling to us, and the way he got it up in here, where you got to have his ruach in order to hear it and to see it. It's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. But yeah, what you do quickly. He's like, yo, the same way you did it before, do it again. Work your little work that you do. Now, no man at that table knew for what intent he spoke this unto him. For some of them thought because Yehuda had the bag, meaning he had the money bag, that Yehoshua had said unto him, buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. He then, having received the morsel, went immediately out, and it was night. The other thing I want to point out is the fact that Hasatan had to have permission to go portray Yehoshua. Because Hasatan had entered Yehuda Iscariot, and then Yehoshua gave him the permission, the go-ahead, the green light. He had to have permission to do it. I just want y'all to see the authority of our bridegroom. Hasatan still couldn't touch him until he was like, yo, go ahead and do what you got to do. Therefore, when he was gone out, Yehoshua said, now is the son of Adam glorified, and Yahuwah is glorified in him. If Yahuwah be glorified in him, Yahuwah shall also glorify him in himself, and shall straightway glorify him. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You shall seek me, and as I said unto the Jews, or Yahudim, whither I go you cannot come. So now I say to you, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my Talmudim, my disciples, if you have loved one to another. Shimon Kepha said unto him, Adonai, whither do you go? Yehoshua answered him, whither I go you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow me afterwards. Kepha said unto him, Adonai, why cannot I follow you now? I will lay down my life for your sake. Yehoshua answered him, will you lay down your life for my sake? Aman, aman, I say unto you, the cock shall not crow till you have denied me thrice. Excuse me, I burped. Till you deny me. So, before I end this out, I just want to tell you about a dream that I had, I want to say about 2 nights ago. I was sitting in on a conversation that was going on between an elder woman that I used to know in Christianity and a young minister that I used to know in Christianity. And I realized after a while that they could not hear or see me, but I could hear and see them. And they were conversing, and the gentleman was, teasing the other woman because, they were close, like brother and sister. But then he starts to pray, and as he's praying, he's using like curse words. And I remember in the dream, I'm like, why are we cursing? So I got up and I walked away. And I walked outside and I realized that I was in this building. And it was like a row of buildings, like kind of how apartment buildings are connected in the south, not in the north, but in the south, it's like a row of buildings. And across from that is another row of buildings. But in the center of these 2 buildings, it was like these, I don't know, it was like grass with sidewalks and lampposts. It wasn't like a street or anything. And I remember I wound up down the little walkway or whatever it is, and across in another building, and it was nighttime, and I was in this stairwell, and it was an open stairwell outside. And in the dream, I remembered it being my son, but it didn't look like my son. But I remember I was trying to hold him still and explain something. I was trying to give him some instructions, and he wouldn't sit still long enough for me to give it to him. And finally, I was able to put him in this little hole to where he couldn't move no more. And he was looking at me, and I started giving him these instructions. Now, mind you, I don't remember what the instructions were, and I believe that was significant because it's not meant for those instructions to come out right now. But after I said it to him, we both looked up at the sky, and the sky was like a blackish reddish color, And I remember you could see these very dim lights just flying around in the sky. And at first I thought they were aircrafts until I recognized the fluidity, if that is a word. If not, I just made it up. You can use it. You're welcome. Until I realized how fluid the movements of these lights were. And I realized it wasn't aircrafts. It was beings flying around in the air. And like I said, they had these lights on them, but the lights were very dim. And so next thing I know, I'm back at the original building, but I'm standing on the outside of the building, but again, nobody can really see me. And I remember that to the left of me, they had all these vehicles, kind of like Mad Max and Resident Evil, like school buses, but they had armor on them, things like that, SUVs, but they had armor on them, and they were loading a whole bunch of people into these vehicles. And to the right of me, it was like this robot, like Transformers, Power Rangers type robot, and it had its fists in the air, and it was shooting these things out of its fists at these beings flying in the sky. And then I woke up. And I didn't immediately get the revelation of the dream. I had asked Yahuwah, and then I sat down. I was telling my dad the dream. And as I was telling him the dream, it was the last part that stuck out to me. Yahuwah was telling me that those beings were the principalities, the powers, the wicked rulers in heavenly realms. He said that's who that was, flying in the sky. And he said the world is trying to fight them with carnal weapons. Now, I believe that whatever the instruction was that I was given to my son was representative of him giving instructions to his son or to his children, Yasharal, because we're his children through Yehoshua Mashiach. But again, that's the only part of the dream I can't remember. I can't remember what I said. But I do remember him telling me that the revelation of that dream, first and foremost, he was showing me that the ones that are natural born Yasharal that are still caught up in Christianity and the other false religions like Muslim and all this other stuff, he was showing me that that's about to come crumbling down. But then when he showed me that robot, and then they're trying to run away, there's nowhere they can run, they're trying to run away, and they're also trying to fight with carnal weapons, but none of them will come to him. That's what he was showing me. None of them will come to him. So his message to us, those of you that are reading this, those of you that are listening to this, he's saying, on guard. You know what I'm saying? It's time for us to get on guard. Okay? You got to pick up your sword. Because remember, fencing deals with swords. Various different types of swords. It's not just that little skinny sword. Various different types of swords. And it's an organized sport. And you use the sword to attack and defend according to set movements and rules, strategies. Spiritual war. You got to be on guard. It's time to be on guard. And that's the instructions he's telling me to give to you right now. Me too. It's time to be on guard. Pick up that sword, Yasharal. And stop waiting for the fight to come to your front door before you decide it's time to pray and fast and so on and so forth. Stop waiting till you need something from Yahuwah and then you decide it's time to pray and fast and whatever. Do that stuff now. Do that stuff now and understand that you don't have to want for anything when you're walking in his will, because he'll provide you with everything that you need to carry out his will. He'll give you everything you need to carry out his will. And all them bills that you're worried about, all them groceries you're worried about getting, all that stuff that the world wants you to worry about, guess what? Yahuwah got your back because he wants you focused on this war. That his will be done on earth as it is in the Shamayim. Because his harvest is ripe. But the laborers are few. All right. If you'd like to get in contact with me, you can reach me at replenishme@gmail.com. Let he who has an ear hear what Ruach HaKodesh is saying to the call out assembly, to the remnant. Hallelujah. Wow. I love you guys. Much shalom and ahava, and until next time, shalom aleichem.